divorced people of Reddit, what could have saved your marriage? She really needed to work on her mental health and refused to do so until I had been checked out of the relationship for about 4 to 6 months at that point. Had to deal with 3 years of temperamental mood swings, her wanting a divorce every 6 months because I wasn't making enough money when already working 60-hour weeks. Then when I was working 80-hour weeks I wasn't cleaning the apartment. Only time I was home I was asleep, so wasn't making it messy and spending enough time with her or spending it with her, so I didn't have time to make a mess or clean. Then she also required me to cook and do the dishes. Finally I told her the next time she says she wants a divorce I was done, because I was literally killing myself to attempt to make her happy. I was so dead inside I was done. And then when she said she wanted a divorce because I was no longer the bubbly guy that made her laugh and smile, I just said okay, got up from the couch and went to bed. She was so pissed off. Over the next 2 months I only treated her as a roommate. She tried lying about how abusive I was. Lost a lot of mutual friends to those lies until they realized she was living with me still instead of trying to get out. They offered her rooms and her parents had a spare room for her that they knew about. All it would have taken though was her working on her mental health. That just kept deteriorating and creating unrealistic expectations. I wish her the best, but I really feel bad for her future partners. Unless she makes significant changes, she is going to burn them to the ground with those expectations. We'll say within 2 weeks of her moving out my mental health was significantly better. Realized it when I took a lunch break, been WFH due to the virus, and stood up to make lunch. I felt light, and this was because all the stress I had prior due to her had been lifted. Don't stay in a relationship if it is literally causing you to feel weighed down by the stress of it. I was married to the sweetest man. He was just always trying to prove himself to the world, always unhappy with his achievements, not masculine enough, quite a nervous demeanor, I can't really explain. He also drank more and more over the years. By the time we turned 40 we decided to divorce. We chose to not have children, so we felt it was fine to just let each other be. We are still friends, although over the past 4 years, since the divorce we did grow apart of course, but we see each other regularly still. Then, a few months ago, he told me he went into therapy because as a child he had been sexually abused by a friend of the family. So there it is. I wonder ever, since he told me that, if he had confided in me or had gotten therapy earlier, in any way, let this secret out. We all stayed together. It makes me sad. All of it. A lot of personal growth on my part before getting married, but that would have prevented marriage rather than divorce. The first time, a driver's license might have saved us. We met in college, married in grad school, and the what's next started looming. He had a humanities PhD and was happy being a barista on an edge of town with no bus service, and he had no desire to learn to drive. Somehow that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I have to drive you to and from work every day because you just don't want to learn to drive yourself. Obviously the issues in the marriage were much more complicated, but I remember that argument being one of the last. The second one, not sure anything could have saved that. He had crippling insecurity that resulted in seeking validation from other women and lying about everything he could conceivably lie about out of weird self-protection. He lied about making a sandwich for lunch when I knew we were out of bread. Found Tinder on his phone for the 3rd or 4th time just to make friends, and I was done. The third one, JK, hasn't happened. The better question is now, would I want to have saved my marriage? We divorced very amicably, and I don't look back on my ex with negative feelings. Around the time was a bit different. I did feel like a failure and was frustrated with them. Basically, I wish we had just waited a lot longer to decide to get married in the first place. My ex was like a good friend that I shouldn't have really been married to, just been good friends with. I don't know that they really wanted to be married to anyone, and I'm not sure we were quite the right marriage pair. I've since realized that my parents were right. If you're with someone you could be in a good marriage with, waiting won't hurt anything. A little bit of effort on his part. I'm a touchy-feely person. If you want to make me happy, just let me cuddle up into you. New BF gets that and does this on the daily. For the last 2 years of our marriage, my husband barely touched me, not even an arm around the shoulder. There was about a foot of space between us. When we went to bed, I will happily do 90% of cleaning and household tasks if my so is regularly giving me the physical affection that I need. The ex just didn't get that. So on top of no physical touch, he did not do any cleaning around the house, never made dinner, never took out the garbage, nothing. Any type of effort into changing any of that, and I would have stayed, at least for a little longer anyway. But I'm happy now, and getting everything I need, so I guess that's all that matters. I was willing to work on it and he wasn't, so the only thing that cold saved it was him realizing he was a major part of the problem. My ex was a narcissist who was basically having an emotional affair with his daughter. He was emotionally and sexually abusive to me. I was a primary money earner, but I was allowed no knowledge or control over our finances, so we were always broke. I became very depressed and couldn't afford to get help. At one point I found an affordable marriage counselor, but he didn't want to put in the time or the work on himself. Eventually he couldn't handle being around me anymore because my depression was so bad and he wanted out. At least he said he did, but I think it was just another manipulation tactic. Because of my religious upbringing, I didn't think divorce was an option. But I'm so glad he gave me the out. Once I felt like saving the marriage was impossible and out of my hands, I managed to get the divorce finalized within 2 weeks. I feel horrible for his little girl and wish that sweet child the best, but I hope he never finds happiness. More communication with me and less focusing on her family problems that she always tried to solve for them. My ex and I were together for 5 years. She was 29 at the end and I was 27. My ex's dad cheated on her mom 10 years ago, but they decided to stay together. However, they would never be able to make decisions on simple things like paying property taxes or the mortgage payment. As a result, every other month her parents always argued and end up threatening about leaving each other and whatnot, where my ex would then go over every day for a week to try to be the middle person and talk to them individually to calm the waters. Her sisters were ages 21, 23, 25 and all had bachelor's degrees with full-time jobs. However, they chose to never want to contribute for paying bills or anything. As a result, her parents paid their cell phones, internet, car insurance, and her mom would cook for them. What caused everything to end was when my ex-parents wanted to buy a new house. They asked her siblings that live with her parents if they could co-sign on the loan. They all said no, because they didn't want the responsibility. As a result, my ex volunteered to do it. I was supportive with the condition that her parents would charge her siblings rent of $500 to lighten the load on her parents for the mortgage and other bills. This all took place in Texas, so the $500 seemed reasonable. Her siblings said no and the parents refused to enforce that. However, her sisters loved to live this unrealistic life of having nice things, going out to eat, driving 30 miles for a coffee at some hipster coffee shop, and all bought new cars in the previous years. So they clearly money was no issue. My ex said she couldn't make them do that, and she would cover the mortgage payments if for some reason her parents couldn't pay. I told her I didn't agree with that. They shouldn't be buying a house in that case then, if they can't afford. But my ex's reply was, I need to do this for my parents' relationship. At this point I knew that was her priority instead of our own relationship. Other thought, I never shared that story with people until now, but now I realized how miserable I was. Wasn't married, but was engaged and in a relationship for nearly a decade, longer than many people have been married. Anyway, the answer is nothing. We fell in love in high school and just grew into two different people. We planned on getting married after college, but there's nothing we could done aside from force it. She wanted to grow up, house, kids, etc. I wanted to stay forever young, just different life goals. Now I'm 30, been with my now fiancé for closing on 4 years, and we are extremely happy over grown kids together. We both have similar goals, neither of us want children, and it's just such a fun romp through life. I never feel any pressure to change like I used to. Nothing. He was nuts. The marriage had become unbearable. He would accuse me of cheating. I wasn't. He would go through my coat pockets while I slept, wake me up if I was talking in my sleep, wanting to know who I was talking about. He physically threw me across the room. I lost weight. I got down to about 90 lbs. I couldn't properly anymore. My nerves were completely shot. He came home one day, threw his shit into a garbage bag, and walked out. Days before he had threatened to kill me, like in my face screaming it. I stood in the kitchen as I watched him walk in, then walk out with his stuff. He never said a word. I watched him walk down the sidewalk. I never felt so much relief. Turns out he was cheating. He married her 3 years later. A month after my divorce was final, he left in NOV. Divorce final in APR. I met my second husband. 12 years later we have 4-year-old twins, a house, and a good marriage.